this is a great privilege, and that was a magnificent film. You can read about Muscle Shoals all you want. I've read and read, but I couldn't have the hardest time getting a clear picture. And I think that the geography says it all, just that space, and the filmmakers really got it with taking you there. So let me ask you this, Rick, you had to confront some difficult issues, some very painful stuff in this film. I'd love for you to talk about who the filmmakers were and how you came to trust them enough with these stories.
Well, the filmmaker, the producer of the film was Stephen Badger. And the director, of course, was Camilleri. And actually the guy who filmed most of it, and it took 4 years for us to do it, believe it or not. And they say it's my fault. But the guy who did the filming of the thing, was in charge of the filming, was the guy who also did Avatar. And so I was impressed with that fact. And of course, when they came to Muscle Shoals, they were riding down Natchez Trace, just doing a trip, kind of a freelance trip to have fun and see the South for what it was and so forth. And they stayed in a hotel, the hotel there in Florence, and they saw all of our pictures and all these pictures on the wall of all the artists we'd recorded over the years. And so they said, well, we want to do a little more research on this. And so they came to see me the next day and said, we want to do a film documentary on Muscle Shoals. And I said, well, how much money do you have? And they said, we've got enough. And so that's how it started. But they became like family to me over the years. And I was told that by them that they had actually filmed me personally 1,500 hours. And I said, so it took 1,500 hours to get 1 minute of Rick Hall that was worth putting on film. So they said, not really, but that's how it started.
Did you feel like the story had been told well enough? Was this the opportunity that you felt like, at last, this is going to be told the way I'd like to get told?
Well, the answer to that is yes, and that's a great question. But of course, I always had some doubts about it throughout the filming of it. My first thought was, I wonder how they will handle this old man who's telling the story about the music business and Muscle Shoals. And of course, I thought they were a couple of college kids just out of college, but they were a little older than that. And I thought, well, they don't know anything about the music business, and they sure don't know anything about my life or anybody's life in Muscle Shoals. So I had my doubts, but the first time I saw it, the finished product, was at Sundance, and it premiered there. And I went out, me and my wife went out to see it. And it was so incredible, I thought. I mean, I just was so taken by it. I couldn't believe that these guys who'd never done a film or a movie before could come up with this interpretation of Muscle Shoals and particularly my life and what I had gone through.
We're going to go out to you guys for questions in about 5 or 6 minutes, so start to work on them and we'll have a mic going around. The Swampers, the first band, it seems to have popped out of the local community, and there's not much backstory how you really sought them out. But one implication for me is that we're often sold this idea that people who make records are these blessed and rare individuals. You seem to believe in a way that talent is much more common than that. And that if you could get those guys together, they even said individually we may not have been great musicians, but together we were special, and you played a role in getting them together. Do you believe that there's something to that with direction, anybody that's got the impulse and a basic level of confidence can be risen to this level?
Absolutely. I think there's no doubt about it. None of us, I think God smiled on a few of us and said, I'm going to let you do this and let you do that and so forth, and write songs and sing background or whatever. But the fact is, it comes with hard work. And I know I don't look it, but I've been in this business for about 40 years. I know I look 16 or maybe 18, but I'm older. But anyhow, this wasn't my first group of musicians. The first group of musicians moved to Nashville, here in Nashville. And by the way, I started my career in Nashville, Tennessee. I was very well acquainted with Owen Bradley and with Chet Atkins and with Shelby Singleton and with all of the big guys in Nashville, Tennessee. So I wrote songs in the beginning and played in the band, and so I made quite a bit of money. I almost choked on that one. I made quite a bit of money writing songs, and they were responsible for me getting the breaks. The Owen Bradleys, in fact, Owen Bradley drew the plans for my recording studio, and he never saw the studio. And Chet Atkins was, my gosh, he was everybody's favorite,
Well, then, the one question the film may have maybe gone a little further in is why, with your ambitions, didn't you say, I'm going to plant one on Music Row and change the world, or go to Los Angeles? Why back to Muscle Shoals?
Well, that's a good question, and everybody asks that question. The two questions we get most of all is, what is the Muscle Shoals sound? And number two is, why Muscle Shoals? So, and my answer to that was I wanted to do black music, and I wanted to do R&B and pop music. And I felt that nobody in the world could do country music better than Nashville, Tennessee can. I always have felt that. I still feel that. Nobody can compete with Nashville when it comes to country music. I felt that my only hope was to do black music or something that wasn't being done in Nashville. Not as much. So that was my answer. That was what I felt that I could pursue. And of course, the first two records I cut were big hit records. And so I was batting 1,000. And so I said, you know what? I think I found my stick. And so I started producing black acts exclusively. And but I never forgot Nashville and forgot what they did. I never forgot what they've done for me. I swear, we've had some of the greatest records of all time that were cut in Nashville, Tennessee, and they were country records. But I always talked mostly in pop and country music. And of course, after I was going to tell you the Swampers thing, we had 5 groups of musicians before the Swampers. And so each one of them portrayed. We had Chip Smallman, we had Joe South, we had some of the greatest musicians, Dwayne Allman, in the world that were a part of our band and what we did. And so I didn't feel that one monkey could stop a show, I don't feel that.
And one more before we go to the audience. How much of a role did you play in picking songs, or say, that song, I don't think it's going to work? Was that a huge role you took, and how did you approach that?
Yes, it was. I was chief cook and bottle washer, you might say. I picked all the songs. I paid all the musicians. I made the deals with record labels. I brought the labels in and brought the artist in, and I was the engineer. I said when it was too fast, it was too slow. I was the guy who said the key is wrong for the artist, or I don't like this song, let's throw it out and move on to something else. So I took the blame for any mistakes I made, and I made several of them. The Allman Brothers was one of them. Percy Sledge was one also, by the way. But I did help get the deal together, and I was paid a nice royalty. And I'm still getting money from a man who's a woman. So thank God, you know.
Well, let's head out here. Hands up.
Got a question over here?
As the chief bottle washer, as you said, I think that the fact that you allowed the photographers and filmmakers into your studio, back then the imagery is incredible. All the old photographs and film, and the film wouldn't be able to exist without those people. This isn't really a question, but it's a lot of producers don't like that kind of interruption. That's kind of what I do for a living. But incredible film, and all those photographers and people that recorded all that imagery. Incredible.
Was it who were they? Who were the photographers? Was it something that you invited in or came with the artists?
Are you talking about the
stills of Aretha, for example, where there's so many great images of that session?
Well, I was terribly protective of the sound of anybody who didn't pay me to produce a song to be in the studio. I never allowed the press to come around. I never allowed it. So for 40 years, we never got a documentary made of Muscle Shoals and his music. And that's why, because we guarded the doors, we hired cops to guard the doors with the Osmonds, with Mac Davis, with Paul Anka, with anybody, with Tom Jones, all the guys that we were doing. We never allowed anybody in the studio unless they were musicians or songwriters, and it was their song we were doing. So to answer your question, I hope I did answer it, that we were very protective of our sound and our echo chambers, all the ways that techniques that we use for recording records.
Well, somebody snuck in then and took some good pictures.
We have another.
I
Okay.
have a question over here.
Hey, Rick.
Yes, sir.
I want to tell everybody I was hanging out with you tomorrow.
That's all right.
Rick, when I look at all of the older musicians, all of the old school guys, and on the documentary there, I wonder what you think about the up and coming musicians. Are there any musicians out there who can bring the sound of, say, the 60s and 70s into the 2000s?
Yes, no doubt about it. Well, we have the University of North Alabama in our town, in Muscle Shoals, in that area. And they have, I think I'm going to be appearing there tomorrow, the next day, in front of some classes. And we entice colleges and high schools and so forth to indulge and to train young people to become musicians, to be songwriters, and that's where our talent is coming from. I will say this though, the future's been quite dim, as you know, in Nashville, Tennessee, because computers, downloading, stealing songs, doing all the bad things. Musicians don't get paid, or producers don't get paid if you don't pay for your recording. And so the computers have served a great purpose in a lot of ways, and we have a lot of them in our studio, Pro Tools and so forth that we use. But this thing of making a record by myself in my basement with the Pro Tool and playing all the instruments and selling the records out of the trunk of my car is not what the music business should be about. It should be about collectively a group of people getting in the studio, coming in and cutting it all live, because that's how we did it. you can't do it that good in any other capacity you do it in. And my belief is that I play off the guitar lick. If I hear his guitar lick and my bass lick is not playing right, I'm going to have to change it because he's got the lick and I need to find a way to fit into that groove. So that's how we do it. You can't do that with one guy calling all the shots and playing all the parts and selling his records out the trunk of his car. It's no way. And so Nashville, just like me, I know all the executive people here believe the same thing, because you just can't replace human beings and get the same sound as you would with
Just want to quickly point out, you have a roster of young artists. Fame is in business. You've got artists signed, so there's some emerging talent. Quickly mention that, if you would, just.
Oh yes, we're always looking for talent. We're looking for songwriters, we're looking for singers, we're looking for engineers, we're looking for guitar players, bass players, keyboard players, the whole thing. And without those people, qualified people, and most of the time, it takes 4 or 5 years for you to be able to accomplish the mission of becoming a hit songwriter or a singer. In the meantime, you got to remember, a musician, you think, well, they make big money. Well, the studio musicians make very little money. They may get called once a month to do a recording session in which they will make $500 for 2 months' work. And they may not get another call for 2 more months. So they don't make much money. It's the songwriters, the record producers, the record companies, and the publishers that make most of the money. And so we're always looking for new talent.
We have time for about one more question.
This was an excellent retrospective about the origins, but I happen to know that the recording industry is still thriving in Muscle Shoals. So would you tell us a little bit about what continues to happen in the industry in Muscle Shoals even today?
Well, at one time there was 12 recording studios in Muscle Shoals. Now there's basically 2. So that almost answers your question. But we want to entice young people in school and colleges to become part of it. And we actually take students in from UNA, and we'll take them up from Vanderbilt or anywhere. If they would come, but they won't come and they can't afford it. But we entice them to come to our studio and work, and we grade them and teach them how to engineer, how to write songs, how to do all these things. But it's the only way I know how to replace the old people like myself and get new talent, new people in. But you people can be a lot of help in that area. Did I answer your question? Kind of.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for your time. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for the opportunity.